The silence inside the cockpit was absolute. Only the slow flicker of the backup panel confirmed that anything remained functional. Commander Elias Quinn lay half-conscious, one arm draped over the broken console, blood drifting from his temple in slow orbs. The crash had torn through the starboard wing, severed main power, and thrown him through his restraints like a rag doll. Now, through the fractured viewport, a forest of light shimmered and twisted beneath a bruised alien sky, pulsing with veins of blue and violet bioluminescence that danced like liquid constellations. The planet was unknown, the system uncharted. This was never the plan. Valkyrie's jump drive had failed catastrophically, overshooting its target by light years. There had been no time for a distress call, no stable coordinates, only the scream of metal and the sudden crush of impact. He didn't know what happened to the rest of the crew, only that their voices had gone silent the moment the cabin door opened to vacuum. But Elias had survived. Barely. And now, as consciousness swam back into the edges of his mind, he realized he was not alone. She knelt beside him. Not human, but not wholly alien either. Limbs long and graceful, skin dark like polished obsidian, veined faintly with blue light beneath the surface. Her face was smooth and unfamiliar. No hair, no nose, no eyebrows, but eyes, deep, large, luminous, watched him with such unblinking stillness that it made his breath catch. She tilted her head slowly, as though observing something fragile, not with detachment but with care. She reached toward him. No hesitation. Her hand, 3 fingers, jointed differently, touched his cheek. The skin was cool, soft like silk drawn over warm stone. And then, impossibly, a voice bloomed inside his mind. "You are not meant to be here, but you are now." There was no sound, no movement of her lips, just a presence, a resonance behind his eyes, as if the thought had always been there, waiting to surface. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry and thick with pain. His lungs burned. Her touch deepened. He felt a wave of calm spread from her fingers down through his neck, across his spine. Warmth, stillness, a lullaby with no sound. "Sleep," she whispered inside his thoughts. "You are safe." Darkness came willingly. When Elias next awoke, he was not in the cockpit. He lay on a surface that molded perfectly to his shape, like a living bed responding to his breath. The air was thick but breathable, rich with the scent of earth and something floral he couldn't name. The chamber around him curved organically. No right angles, no metal, no seams. The walls pulsed with slow ambient light that shifted in hue as he stirred. And she was there. She stood across the room, her back partially turned, fingertips grazing the inner curve of the wall, where glowing strands like vines moved beneath the surface in lazy patterns. Her posture was peaceful, as though listening to something only she could hear. He sat up. Pain flickered in his side, but dulled quickly. She turned, as if sensing his thoughts. "You saved me," he rasped. She nodded once. "You understand me." Again, a nod. Then her voice filled his mind, not as echo, but as shared emotion. "Your words are rough, but I understand their shape." He tried to take her in fully now. Her body was slender, strong, covered in what looked like living fabric, threads of moss-like material wrapped across her shoulders and waist, leaving much of her limbs bare. Every movement was silent, fluid, as though she had grown in this place rather than walked into it. "Where am I?" he asked. "Below the surface. Safe. The winds above would have torn your body apart. I brought you down. You live here. I am part of here." He swallowed. "Are there others?" A pause. Then, there were. The ache in that word, even without tone, settled in his chest. "I'm Elias," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, in the silence between thoughts, "Sarah." The name wasn't spoken. It wasn't even fully hers, not in the way humans carried names. But he felt it fit, Something about the curve of it in his mind when she offered it. So he used it. And when he did, her skin shimmered faintly beneath the surface, like a deep lake catching the light. Days passed, or something like them. Time flowed differently here. There were no sunrises, only subtle shifts in the ambient glow from the chamber's living walls, tied somehow to the binary stars above. Sarah tended to him with quiet precision, applying salves to his healing ribs, feeding him with dense, translucent fruits that seemed to grow directly from the organic infrastructure around them. She said little aloud, but he learned her more through silence than speech. She could feel his thoughts when he let her, and he began letting her more and more. He learned that she had once been part of a vast, interconnected species, entities who lived not only in the physical realm, but partially within a biospheric neural net that spanned continents. They spoke through resonance, through touch, through dream. But something had happened, an event she would not name. And now she was alone. Not abandoned, left behind. He asked once if she had lost someone. Her answer was a quiet wave of grief that pulsed into his chest, like distant thunder. He never asked again. But something had changed. They began spending time not just in the chamber, but in the world beyond it. She led him through bioluminescent groves, where plants responded to her presence like pets, unfurling their stalks as she passed. Pools of liquid crystal reflected not their faces, but fragments of memory. His mother's voice, a childhood drawing, the curve of Earth's moon seen through a visor. It was not magic. It was her. She had connected with him, not invaded, just touched enough of his thoughts to reflect them back gently. And somehow, without saying it, he knew she treasured what she saw. And in turn, he began to treasure her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in a way that defied symmetry, but because she listened. Fully, without assumption, without interruption. Because when he reached out and took her hand, she took his with the reverence of someone who had been without touch for too long. And it felt like home. They walked together often now. Through winding forest tunnels of bioluminescent arches, beneath canopies that shimmered with ambient memories, through fields of slow-breathing moss that pulsed when touched. The world was alive, but not in the violent, predatory way Earth's wilds could be. This place responded like a nervous system, and Sarah was its living synapse. Through her, the entire landscape seemed to notice him, grow curious about him, gently reach for him with color and sound. He began to understand more of her speech, not through words, but through feelings layered with echoes of her own memories. She showed him what it meant to exist in harmony with an environment, not as master or subject, but as a participant. She had not built the chamber they lived in. It had grown around her, grown in response to her grief, to her solitude. He sometimes asked her questions about before, the civilization that had shaped her, but she never gave names. She only said, "They were many. Then they were gone. I remained." Not all by choice, he understood. There was a quiet pain in the way she moved when she remembered, a softness in her step. He watched it all with growing reverence. She was a mystery, yes, but not a puzzle to be solved. She was complete, even in her brokenness. And the more time they spent together, the less he felt like a visitor. His body had begun to adapt in small ways, skin no longer cracked in the heavier atmosphere. His sleep cycles had adjusted to the rhythm of the pulse beneath the ground. But the most profound change was one he could not name. It was the weight that had begun to lift. The grief that had followed him, grief for his crew, his home, his former life, had not disappeared. But in Sarah's presence, it had grown quiet, like a wound no longer raw. One evening, they sat by a pool that reflected the canopy above. He could see the stars through the opening, small, but there. Twin suns far beyond the misted sky. She sat beside him, knees pulled to her chest, silent. "I used to be afraid of being alone," he said. She looked at him. He didn't need to explain further. She understood. "You were not built for silence," she offered gently. Your kind wraps itself in noise to feel known. He smiled. And you? You've lived in silence for how long? She did not answer. Instead, she leaned into him, her shoulder brushing his. It was the first time she had touched him without healing, without intent, just presence. He placed his hand over hers. Her skin warmed slowly, light blooming faintly beneath the surface, pulsing in time with his own heartbeat. He turned to look at her. Her gaze was not intense this time, not probing. It was soft, vulnerable, as if she had opened something inside herself just enough to let him see in. And what he saw was longing. For company, for understanding, for someone to stay. He didn't kiss her. He didn't have to. In that moment, they were already joined, not in body, but in something deeper, something chosen. I'm not afraid anymore, he whispered. And her thoughts answered, like wind across still water. Neither am I. Over the following cycles, days, weeks, or whatever passed for time here, their connection deepened. They no longer needed to speak. She could sense him from across the chamber, feel the rhythm of his thoughts before he spoke them. He, in turn, began to feel her presence even when she wasn't physically near. Not as a voice, not as a hallucination, just a quiet awareness that she existed alongside him. An echo always returning. They built rituals together, collecting light fruits from a grove that bloomed only under mist, meditating beside the reflection pool where the water sang in response to emotion, lying side by side in the sleep chamber, her skin glowing faintly, his hand resting gently against hers. They never crossed a line into something physical in the way he once might have expected. And yet, it was the most intimate bond he had ever known. Because everything here was built on choice, not on instinct, not on biology, on two minds choosing, again and again, to be close, to share, to remember each other. She once said to him, "My kind love through union of memory, through shared recall. I had forgotten what it meant to love as you do, moment by moment." He looked at her then and said simply, "Then let's remember each other, moment by moment." And she smiled, not with her lips, but with her entire being. Then came the signal. It started as a tremor in his mind, a frequency he had almost forgotten, compressed, mechanical, unmistakably human. He gasped, sitting upright, heart racing. Sarah entered moments later, already aware. "Something is reaching for you." He nodded. Earth, or someone from it. They found the ship. She lowered her gaze. He stood, pacing the chamber, adrenaline pouring into limbs he had nearly forgotten how to brace for danger with. They'll come. If they trace the source, they'll land. They'll want me back. You are still one of them. He looked at her. Am I? She didn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because she refused to influence his answer. His breath caught in his throat. I can't abandon them. But I can't abandon you either. She stepped toward him, slower than usual. Her hand reached his chest, palm flat over his heart. Then choose with your heart, not from duty, from truth. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since crashing on this world, he didn't feel like he was torn in two. He felt whole. They found him on the edge of the old crash site. Not the humans, the memory. Sarah brought him there in silence. The bioluminescent vines had long since grown over the blackened wreckage, but beneath the living tangle, fragments of the Valkyrie remained, scorched metal, shattered carbon plating, a cracked helmet, a piece of his past. He stood over it, unmoving. It looks smaller now, he said after a long while. Sarah remained beside him. The wind moved gently through the canopy above. The trees gave no judgment. The planet itself was quiet. It did not bring you peace, she said. He shook his head. No, but it was my home. For years. She tilted her head. Her skin was dimmer here, like her light retreated in places where his old world still echoed. Do you want to go back? He looked up at the sky. The stars were cold, still distant, but he could feel the pressure building in the edges of his mind. The signal from Earth, or whoever had found the transponder, was growing stronger. Soon they would breach orbit. I don't know what I'd go back to, but you still feel called. He looked at her then, really looked. Her body, so strange, and yet so familiar now. Her posture, a mixture of ancient patience and something almost trembling beneath the surface. I feel torn, he admitted. She nodded, as if she'd expected that answer all along. Then she stepped forward and reached for his hand. Not his wrist, not his forearm. His hand, a human gesture, one she'd learned and chosen. You once asked me what love meant to my kind. He nodded. It was never about possession or binding. It was the sharing of memory, the quiet promise, you will not be forgotten, even if you leave. His throat tightened. If you go, she said, you will take part of me with you, and I will remain here, still knowing you, still remembering you. He wanted to respond, to tell her he wouldn't leave. That Earth could wait, but something inside him ached at the idea of lying to her, and she saw that too. You don't need to decide yet, she whispered. Come with me. I want to show you something. She led him through a glade he hadn't seen before, deep in the valley, where the roots of the world converge. The trees here were older, thicker. Their surfaces gleamed with patterns like fingerprints. The ground pulsed faintly beneath his steps, almost like walking on the skin of a sleeping titan. At the center stood a structure unlike anything else he'd seen. It wasn't built, it had grown. An arching canopy of translucent matter, hollow and resonating with soft tones that shifted as they approached. Sarah reached forward, placing her hand on the central stalk, and the air changed. He felt it immediately, not just sound, but emotion. Memories, thousands of them. They flooded into him in pulses, brief, fleeting glimpses of moments not his own. A sky of violet thunder, a child's hand touching glowing stone, the shiver of fear during first contact, the warmth of a union that defied language. He staggered. Sarah caught him. What is this? He breathed. This is what remains of us, she said. The living vault. Each of my kind, when they passed, left behind the core of what they were. Memory, emotion, connection. This is their gift, their grave, their story. He swallowed. And you. I visit. I add. I remember. He looked around in awe. It's beautiful. It is incomplete. She turned to him, and her eyes no longer looked like alien pools of silver blue. They looked tired, full, alive. I want you to leave part of yourself here, if you choose to go. He didn't answer, couldn't. Instead, he reached out and touched the central pillar. In that moment, it responded, threads of energy rippling outward like ripples from a single drop of water. And he understood. She wasn't asking for a promise. She was giving him permission to remember and to be remembered. That night, as they sat beside the shallow pool outside their chamber, he watched the sky again. A new light glowed faintly in the upper atmosphere, a dot moving steadily across the curve of the stars. They'll land soon, he said. Sarah nodded. He turned to her. They won't understand you. I know. They'll fear this place. They always do. He looked down, then back at her. I don't want to lose you. She leaned in slowly, gently resting her head against his shoulder. Then don't. He wrapped his arm around her. Not in desire. Not in desperation. In acceptance. He would not decide tonight, but he would hold her while the world changed around them. And if this was the last night they shared as just the two of them, he would remember it as perfect. They arrived with precision and silence. 3 ships broke atmosphere during the dark phase, their hulls reflecting little light, moving like black wings through a bruised sky. They did not announce themselves with beacons or sound. They didn't have to. Sarah had known the moment their quantum signature penetrated the exosphere. And Elias had felt it too, in the tension in his bones, the sudden stillness of the ground beneath their chamber. The Earth expedition had come. He stood with Sarah beneath the canopy of the grove, watching the lights descend in synchronized spirals. No fire, no violence, just cold, precise geometry. He couldn't tell if that made it better or worse. "You said they would fear this place," he said softly. "They always do. You think they'll try to hurt you. Not with intention, but they will bring their need to measure, to isolate, to prove. That is a kind of violence, too." He nodded. "And me. They will see you as theirs, a lost piece come home." The thought sent a chill through him. "I don't know if I am theirs anymore." Sarah looked at him. "That is not my question to answer." He took her hand. "I want them to understand you. Then speak. Will they listen?" Her voice was quieter now. "That is the oldest question of all." The Earth team consisted of 8, 3 scientists, 2 security officers, 1 diplomatic observer, and 2 medical staff. Their suits were sleek, modern, pressurized composites with built-in AI response layers. Their weapons were holstered but present. Their eyes flickered with overlays only they could see. When Elias stepped from the grove to meet them, their leader, a woman with iron-gray eyes and a voice like steel wrapped in silk, froze in place. "Commander Quinn," she said. He nodded. They scanned him, checked his vitals, confirmed his identity. He passed every biometric checkpoint. Still human, but not unchanged. "Your tissue density has altered," said one medic. "Retinal layers are adaptive," added the other. "You've experienced neurological reinforcement," said the scientist with the glowing monocle. The leader stepped forward. "You've been here too long." Elias tilted his head. Defined too long. She didn't smile. Instead, she asked, "Are there intelligent native species?" He paused, then turned slowly toward the grove. Sarah stepped forward. The team shifted, subtle. Fingers moved near weapons, stances braced. Their systems registered something they didn't understand, and fear followed logic like shadow follows light. "This is Sarah," Elias said. No one responded. Sarah bowed her head slightly, not submissive, respectful. Then, for the first time, she spoke out loud. "I greet you," she said. Her voice was smooth, tonal, learned from him, shaped for them. The diplomat blinked. "You? Speak?" Sarah nodded. One of the scientists muttered, "Impossible. No larynx. Where is the resonance point?" "She speaks with intent," Elias said. "Does it matter how?" There was a long silence. Then the leader spoke. "We need to return you for debriefing. You're under Directive 49 Gamma. Potential contamination protocol. Your exposure." "I'm not a virus," Elias said. "No, but you've bonded with one." That landed like a slap. Elias stepped forward, his voice calm. "This world didn't change me. It remembered me. And Sarah didn't infect me. She loved me, more honestly than any institution I ever served. That's not relevant. It's everything." They stared at each other, and he knew no words would shift this. But Sarah had known that too. She stepped forward and gently touched Elias's hand. "Let me show them," she whispered in his thoughts. "If they cannot hear through words, let them hear through memory." He looked at her, uncertain. "Only what you choose to share," she added. "Only what is true." He nodded. Sarah turned back toward the Earth team. She raised both hands slowly and placed her palms against the biotree at the grove's heart. The structure responded immediately, glowing brighter, threads of light pulsing outward across the ground. And then, memory poured from it, projected, visible. The team saw Elias, wounded and dying, held in her arms. They saw her nursing him, the forest responding to his pain. They saw their long walks, their silent rituals, the sharing of thought. They saw how he wept when she showed him the last memory of her people. They saw the pool where their minds touched, and he whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." They saw love. Not simulation, not manipulation. Just two beings from two broken worlds choosing each other. And when it was over, there was only silence. Until the diplomat whispered, "I didn't think aliens could feel that." Elias turned sharply. "She's not alien to me." One of the guards spoke quietly. "This will go back to Earth. They'll want to isolate her. Study the forest. Cut it open." Elias felt his chest tighten. The team leader looked at Sarah, then at Elias. "You don't want to go back." "No. You understand what that means." "Yes." She paused. Then, unexpectedly, she nodded. "We have enough here to report contact. Your return isn't required, but we'll transmit the footage. They'll know." "I know." "You're choosing her." "I already did." The wind stirred. Leaves shimmered. Sarah stepped beside him, took his hand, and for the first time, didn't speak in thought or voice. She just stood there, beside him, like she always had. And Elias felt peace. Real. Total. They left without violence. The ships rose, and Earth moved on. Curious, alarmed, watching, but from a distance. Years passed. Elias never counted them. Sarah never asked. They lived, not like myth or dream, but like truth, gentle, evolving, shared. They planted new memory in the living vault. They remembered old sorrows and turned them into songs. And one day, deep in the grove, beneath the tree that remembered everything, he died. Sarah did not cry. She placed his hand on the memory stone and whispered, "I will remember you every cycle. I will keep your name alive in the wind. I will carry your love in the roots of this world." She leaned close and kissed his forehead. And the stars, above their quiet forest, burned just a little brighter.